It's impressive.
All right, here we go. We're going to meet you guys. You'll see the open, and we'll come into the show.
What a play after play after play.
And he's got a lot of room to run, and she is taking over.
Drones, that's just the greatest conference in the country is showing out tonight, gentlemen. I cannot believe it. That is the greatest football game.
Thank you so much for joining us on a Tuesday night live from the basement First Amendment Sports Podcast Studios. I'm Ken Marangolo. He's Kevin Ricca.
It's great to be back in the basement, Ken.
We are appropriately
I'm
distanced from Luke as well. It's going to be an awesome night. We're getting back to covering the greatest high school conference in the land. We like to do it on a weekly basis, talk about it all year round. We appreciate you going along for the ride with us. Our co-host coming at us live from an undisclosed Kensington location, Tim Strachan.
What's going on, guys? I don't claim to know much, although Kevin said if I grew a beard, I would at least look like I knew more than I do. So I'm trying that out. I know that it's Tuesday. This is the only time I ever know what time of the week is when we have this show. And I also know that the guest we have on tonight is going to be fantastic. We're going to get a little bit of a history lesson and have a lot of fun.
Some chemistry, too.
I was going to say, he's bringing all kinds of chemistry. Let's welcome to the show this week's guest, pride of currently Bishop Ireton, head coach and teacher of young people, Chip Armstrong. Great to have you on, sir.
Well, thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it. I'm a big fan of the show, so I hope I don't disappoint.
Never. Well, you can't disappoint. Now, I waited a full 7 or 8 seconds before I also mentioned that you were head coach of Bishop McNamara and come from a school that I happen to love over there in Forestville.
Yeah, it's McNamara. I was the head coach and the AD at McNamara for 5 years after I left Ireton in the 90s, and just a great experience. I love McNamara. I just all three of the high schools that I've worked at, I've really had this great relationship with the school, and especially with the young men that you coach. That's what it's really all about.
We appreciate your patience as well. We tried to get off a couple weeks back, and a guy with 30 years coaching experience. Now, you've had it all happen, including a pandemic. I mean, we're sitting here on September 8th with no football. But really what I wanted to say is thanks, Coach. Thanks for being a class act and bearing with us a couple weeks back.
No problem. No problem at all. I was teasing my friends. I said I think that it was they had me on the night of the Republican convention, and I think that they didn't want to hurt the ratings too bad. So.
Well,
I know that's amazing. First of all, I love it. We usually T is usually the first one to bring up politics, but during an election year, even he's been scared to go there.
Right.
But let's start in the classroom because. And then move our way all the way around. I'm not. There's no order here, but I love the idea of our coaches in our league being great teachers, and they are no matter what they're doing. But you're also a great teacher in the classroom, and I know how much pride you take in that.
Yeah, it's really funny because when you first start, I think coaching is teaching at its highest form, and I've always said that, but. When you first start teaching and you're a coach, you're kind of like, you think, well, teaching is kind of my side gig, but you realize that it's the other way around. And, I kind of grown into teaching. I always had a passion for coaching, but I've been teaching college prep chemistry, for 15 years now. And now it's like, it's something that you really look forward to the first day of school until this year. But it's, they go hand in hand. Sports are a part of the education. When we were at McNamara, we used to say it was the 8th period of the day, and I still believe that. I think it's an integral part of a young person's education.
How many parents are very upset right now that they're doing chemistry experiments in living rooms and basements and kitchens all across the conference?
That's actually been like one of the more difficult things that we're trying to figure out. Like it's going to be more demos and watching. Like we've got this hybrid system. We're the only school in Alexandria that's that is having in-person learning. TC Williams and St. Stephen's and Episcopal are both it's all virtual. So we're taking a gamble, but it's the work that our administration has put into this. It's crazy, but at least I get to see most of them 2 days a week, 3 days a week. We have a certain segment that go remote full time, but I think at least we're trying to do this and we're taking a lot of precautions. So it's, I know a lot of parents, I have a college daughter that's went back to Old Dominion, and I think a lot of parents just really wanted to get their kids back to school. But we're making a real good run at this, and it's just different. And the whole, we should be in week 2 right now. We should be getting ready for our 3rd game of the season. And, here we are. We're not even really doing a whole lot, as school gets underway.
It's so disappointing. But do us a favor. Let us know a little bit about this academic facility that Ironton just got underway last February. And as you said, they sent everyone home in March. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the school was it was built in 1965. So if you see 1964, so if you see the outside of McNamara and you see the outside of Bishop Ironton, they look almost exactly the same. And both have done some extensive remodeling. We remodeled. We tore down what was called the Oblate House, and it's where the priests used to live. And they tore that down one summer. And the building process took about 3 years to get this new academic wing up. It's a science and technology center, a STEM, really a STEM program for science and math people and computers. And we just opened it up in February and had a ribbon cutting ceremony. And then mid-March we're going home. So we're all back here. This is really the first time we've had an opportunity to really enjoy the new building, and it's pretty nice.
Very cool.
Well, let's talk. I mean, we're not playing ball. I understand that, but I know that as a coach, you're coaching. I mean, there might not be any games this week, but I know it's going through your mind. I know we're a long way from games, but can you take us a little bit through how you're handling this situation with your athletes?
One thing that was tough for us was that we kept. And we started having Zoom meetings. As soon as we went home in March, we started having Zoom meetings. And I have a couple of guys on my staff that are certified personal trainers. And so they were doing Zoom workouts. And there's some live workouts now, but we really haven't been able to do anything on campus. And that's been the frustrating part. We got on campus for about 2 or 3 weeks. And then the WCAC made the announcement that we weren't going to play until possibly February. So we're all hoping that we'll play in the spring, but what it did, it gave us another 6 month off season. And so then you kind of go back and say, okay, what do I want to accomplish? So for me, what I want my kids to be able to do is get stronger. We want to develop them, do what we can do with the offense and defensive line. And then, I want to get 7-on-7 going. So, I told the kids when we started and the parents, we're going to get through the first 2 weeks of school, and then we're going to start up. I've got some new transfer students that have come in, and I want everybody to get acclimated to school, including the teachers. I have 4 guys in the building, including myself, and we need to get the swing of things too before we start really getting into our workouts. Our weight room is, we have a brand new weight room, so the equipment was being installed today. So I'm about a week out before I can start getting the kids in there.
Is 7-on-7? Where are we staying on 7-on-7? Because I know that there was mixed signals from different jurisdictions that were classifying 7-on-7 different ways. I'm excited about 7-on-7 because, like you, that's all we're going to get for a little while. So, what are they telling you? How is it different in Virginia versus where we are here in Maryland, or is there a difference?
Well, the Federation came out with some guidelines. We're in Virginia. We've been in phase 3 for quite a while. Okay. So but the Diocese of Arlington said, well, you can't do anything with the ball on campus. And so basically what it's done is driven some of the teams off campus. And so we can practice off campus. And that's what 7-on-7, that's what I really want to do. we put in a new passing system this year, and I really wanted to just work with the kids on that. And we got in a 7-on-7 tournament down in Virginia a couple weeks back. It was called the Spartan 7-on-7 shootout, and they have these travel teams that's all they do. It was really interesting because we're a high school team, and we did fine, but it was just a complete different mindset. And some people say 7-on-7, you've got to really be careful as to not create bad habits, get the ball out when you're supposed to. And but there's a new world order with this stuff, that these travel teams, the quarterback that was the good counsel quarterback is now at St. Albans. He was in it. There were some really good players. But my point of all this rambling is it was very physical. I mean, there was no social distancing. Most people were playing man to man. The coaches we had masks on the sidelines, like you see these high school football games on ESPN. But, to my knowledge, these kids have been playing sports all summer long, the lacrosse kids, baseball. And so far, they've been pretty good. We don't have any reported cases. So we're trying to be safe, but we're going to be in a 7-on-7 league that's going to start next Saturday down here in Old Fort Hunt High School, Carl Sandburg Middle. And it's an 8-week thing. And I just use it really to get our guys and get reps and get used to what we're doing.
Hey, Coach, I was wondering, you've been at this for a long time, and your path, which I hope we sort of cover here soon, is a less traveled one, in my opinion. You were a coach, then you got into administration and teaching, got out of it, got back into it. But my first question is, what got you into it in the first place? I've talked with you a little bit in the last couple of weeks. I know your passion for football and the players, but also hearing now tonight your passion for teaching in the schools. What was it that got you started?
I always wanted to be a coach when I was in middle school. I wanted to be a high school football coach, and so I went to my dad and asked him. I said, "I'd like to be a high school football coach." And I said, "What do you think?" And he goes, "Well, you got to be smart." So I'm like, "Well, I'm still going to try it." So I did. I wanted to do it when I was in college. I wanted to be a coach. I went to Frostburg, and I always wanted to coach. And so as soon as I got out of college, I was working for my dad's company as a plumbing company in Alexandria. And he said, "No, you can't take 2 hours off at the end of the day in the fall and go coach." And then one of his friends, it was actually a guy that he played football with in high school, a guy named Al Judd. He said, "You ought to let him do it. It's your company. You should let him coach." And so I did that. I started coaching in the Virginia public schools, an assistant coach. And then in 91, I became the head coach here at Ireton and was here for 3 years. And then I went to McNamara and was the AD and head football coach there for 5 years, and then went up to Mount St. Joe. But hey, people ask me about it all the time. I said I did it opposite. I was an athletic director. I was an assistant principal. And then I started teaching after that. I taught a little bit at McNamara, but I was the AD there for 4 years. And so it's been a little different. I've always taken programs that were, it was kind of a building process. Even at McNamara, Tom Clark was a great coach, but when I came in there in '94, we had like 2 linemen. And so it was a building process. We had some really good players there, but I always think it takes 3 years. Sometimes it takes maybe 3 to 5 years to turn a program around.
Well, I'm sorry, T. Go ahead.
I had just one follow-up to it, is that you were a coach, you were AD, you got into teaching and administration. Yeah, I know you still dabbled in the sports and stayed around it, but now you're the head coach again. What's different from when you were last time the head coach to now? X's and O's don't change that much. The language is always the same. But, what other things have changed that you've had to adjust to as a head coach in today's game?
Well, that's a really good question. I stepped down. I think 2009 was my last season at Mount St. Joe, and so everybody has family things that they feel like they owe their family, and I've had to take breaks a couple times along the way because of family situations. And I have a son. He's 25 years old, but he had special needs, and that was a difficult time for our family back when I was at McNamara. But the X and O's have changed a little bit. So I actually went back and was an assistant coach at St. Joe for a couple years before I came down here. But the X's and O's are different. Everybody's running the spread now. But I think, I'm not saying the kids have changed, but expectations have changed a lot. And I think that there's a lot of migration in high schools. Kids and parents' expectations are a little different than they used to be. Most people that play high school football, their goal is to go play college football. And, my thing as a teacher and as a coach is I try to find the best, what I think is the best match, and then recommend that to the kid. But I think that if I could say anything, it's the expectations of kids and parents. And, there's a lot of like kids transfer in, kids transfer out. I have 9 new faces that are going to be on my football team this year that are coming in. And in the spring, I was really distraught because right as we left, I lost about 4 or 5 kids. So it's just a matter of like, I think the biggest thing is you get a good coaching staff, you get them together, and you treat kids well. But that's the thing that's changed the most, I think, the migration. And you see it all the time about this kid transfers to another school. And, in the old days, you might have held a grudge. And, when kids leave, I say, I want you to do what's best for you. And the same thing when the kids come in. We're going to run a good, clean program. We're going to work hard, and we're going to get you ready to go to the next level. But that's the biggest thing that I've seen, and that's probably occurred over the last 6-7 years.
I certainly appreciate hearing that, as do many of the parents of the kids that you coach and teach. And I love that we've delved into the whole teaching thing. But let's not forget what type of coach this man is. I mean, he's one of the old school guys, one of the coaches that just gives other coaches the credit, as he did in the pre-show. But Coach, you show up at Ironton, you win the first VISA title in school history, 2 WCAC South champions. There's a reason why they brought you back after 25 years. And let's not forget, as T-Bird is still listening, he snapped that 5-year WCAC championship DeMatha win streak. Chip Armstrong was the man to do it. I know many coaches that really badly wanted to be the man that did that. Congratulations, Coach.
Well, thanks. That was a special team that year and a special game. It's funny because one of my coaches that I just hired here is a guy named Wayne Bacon, who played on that team that beat DeMatha. And that's a really tight-knit group. Those guys have stayed together, and I keep in contact with all of them. But when we see each other, we will kind of go almost play for play, because what people don't realize is that was the last time McNamara has beaten DeMatha. That was 1996, and we played them 2 weeks in a row. And the first week of the last game of the regular season, they beat us 21-20, and we went for 2 at the end and didn't get it. And then the next week, we blocked an extra point at the end, and we beat them 28-27. But that was right up there with one of the biggest thrills. There's nothing like a game like that to make you can't explain it to people how that makes you feel when you win a game like that. And we had the same thing happen up at St. Joe. We beat Gilman on the last when Gilman had it all cranked up. We beat them on a 44-yard field goal. Those are things that you just remember for the rest of your life. But
a 44-yarder, huh?
44-yarder at the buzzer. And
you don't see that every day.
Yeah.
That's very cool. I know that my dad always enjoyed your company. He wanted me to say hello tonight, obviously, and you guys had some battles, but we all did. I also want to say thank you, because we did get Tom Clark down there at Catholic when you took over the program at McNamara, and it's almost like we've always just missed each other. I think you coached against me 1 year at Ironton when I was at St. John's.
Is that right? Your senior year?
It was my junior year, I believe.
Okay.
Would have been 93.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was here at Ironton in '93. My first year
at Ironton. St. John's.
Yeah, I don't think we played you guys. I would have remembered that. I would remember that.
I just remember we played Ironton. Maybe it was just my freshman, sophomore year. So we've missed each other.
I think when I took over Ironton the first time, there were 16 players on the varsity roster when I took over, and they were talking about doing away with football back then. And so we got the numbers up to, and back then we had two teams, and we got the numbers up to 70 in 2 years. And it gets harder and harder because what I think is they're kind of football players or they're not. You don't have many kids that walk in the door as freshmen, and some of them say, well, I want to play football. But if you haven't played, it's really difficult to just pick it up. And there's a two-year process to kind of get used to the contact and used to, learning the game. And so that's something in the private schools, especially the smaller schools, we're trying to recruit kids more than we ever have. And that goes back to Tim's question. The recruiting is just like a full-time job now.
Very true. I have noticed you've gotten a couple kids throughout this process over the last 6 months.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Coach. You're getting some players.
We have a couple kids that are. I have 5 kids that have come in from public school, Woodbridge High School in Virginia. They've transferred in, and a couple of them have been offered, and a couple have been committed. And we have the problem at smaller schools typically is the line of scrimmage. And you could get some skill guys and play like Marty Favre used to call it basketball on grass. And so you could do that, but if you don't have the guys up front, you're hurting. And so that's the teams that I've had in some of the programs that I've taken over. That's what you've had to develop. I've got really good line coaches. I've got Dave Davis, who is St. John's guy.
Dave Davis. Captain of the Season of the Soldier. He's one of my favorite, Coach. He was a great leader.
And he teaches these kids all these martial arts stuff. And I just know when I send them down there, they're going to get I get my money's worth. Jeff Cave is my new O-line coach. He came over from TC, and he's been around. He's awesome. He's probably the best O-line guy I've been around. So I'm really blessed to have the guys on board that I do. And that's a big part of it. I mean, you don't get to coach as much when you're a head coach, but it's like you're almost like a CEO. And that's the part I miss the most. But I coached the O-line last year. I know this guy's better, so I fired myself. And, I'll take care of the major problems like talking to parents and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I'm sure he's glad you're doing that and he's not doing that. But this is my first chance to ask a coach this question. I've been itching to ask a coach this since we entered this new scenario, and that's this modified schedule we're potentially looking at, which nothing's official yet, so we'll wait till they make official announcements. And not every WCA school has the luxury of piling these sports on top of themselves. And so I wonder what your thoughts are on potentially having to manage 2 or 3 sport athletes in your program as they are preparing preparing for a season or finishing a season, with everything kind of being pushed together. And it's a unique scenario this year that hopefully, if we're lucky and God willing, we'll never have to deal with it again in our lifetimes. But you're going to have to deal with it this year. So what thoughts do you have about that? Is it even a concern at Ireton? Is it something you're dealing with? Is it the coaches huddling, or basketball and football and lacrosse and baseball? Are you guys all trying to work together for schedules? Because it's going to be tight.
Yeah, and that's something that I talked. Our new AD is also our head basketball coach, a guy named Dwayne Bryant. You may know him. He's Georgetown grad, played for John Thompson. Rest in peace, Coach Thompson. But we've talked about how we're going to handle this, because basketball season will kind of run right into football season, so it's going to be opposite of how. And I have one thing we do at Ireton is we encourage kids to play multiple sports. So I have probably 4 or 5 football, basketball kids. I've got a couple lacrosse kids. Baseball is the sport that there's not as much crossover, but I do have a couple baseball players. So I'm a little concerned that, if you're a top lacrosse player, a top baseball player, you may, not want to risk injury, by playing football if it's held between February and May. And so the coaches, we're all getting together and huddle and talking about that, kind of playing the game before it's played, and try to figure out like what the best case scenario is at. Because what it does too is that people aren't talking about what it'll do for us if we finish in May. And we do have this condensed schedule. We're going to have to turn around And the next thing you know, we're really in our preseason almost. We're going to get ready to, start our summer stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see the way it plays out. But I'm hopeful that they'll have at least a WCAC schedule. We would love to play St. Stephen's and some of our traditional rivalries. St. Albans we usually play every year, and John Paul the Great down in Dumfries. So I'm hoping that we can get 5 or 6 games in.
Yeah, well, it's like I said, it's a unique scenario that hopefully we only have to work through once. But y'all are gonna have to work through it, and I mean, we know it, and all the people who watch our show regularly know it. These are the best people in the world, and you know what? The key is that you guys have the kids' interest first and foremost. That's what separates, in many ways, the WCAC from a lot of sports conferences. For better or worse, outside of our league, the kids come first, and so I got nothing but confidence that you guys will come up with the right answer, but it won't be easy.
Hey, there's Coach with Kyle Fuller.
That's Kyle Fuller.
Is he the best you ever coached?
Yeah, Kyle was we knew when he was a sophomore that he was just a special athlete. And he, we did the 7-on-7, and I just, his brother at the time was, I think, playing for the Tennessee Titans, Vincent Fuller, and he would come up and give him tips. But Kyle was he could cover anybody. And when he was a sophomore, the colleges started coming by, and we'd do let him watch our practice. And I think it was a guy from Rhode Island said, well, I won't have a shot with him because of his hips. And he was just an exceptional, real nice guy too, Kyle. And we put him at quarterback his senior year, and he tore a tendon. He did what they call a jersey tear. He tore a tendon in his finger. We were 2-0, and after that we didn't do so well. So he was an exceptional athlete. I really thought he was one of the best players in the MIA at the time, and just a great guy. Really, really good leader, quiet guy, but he's done really well. I keep in touch with him somewhat, not too much, but he was a great kid.
Well, we got another one for you here, taking you down memory lane. Throw it up there. What do you think about that? What do you think, Coach?
Now you see the DeMatha. You see what the ball says too, right? That's Mike Brooks. Mike Brooks was our quarterback at McNamara, and he was quarterback in that game in 1996. So we decided, I had that ball sitting in my basement. It was all dusty, and I decided that I should give it back to the players because so I gave it to Mike because Mike's personal trainer. He's up the street here at One Life Fitness, and I see him all the time. And I thought, when I gave it to him, I said, now look, this isn't just for you. This should get passed around. You guys might decide you want to put it at the trophy case at McNamara, but you all decide it's your football. You all earned it. We had some really good players on that team. So they said they're going to beat Mike up and take the ball away. But he's an exceptional guy. He played defensive back at Harvard for us, and I still see him all the time.
Yeah, they might need a bunch of them to get that ball from old Mike. Coach, who's the best guy in the WCAC that you coached against? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I know there's a handful of names, and you've been around 30 years.
Yeah, there's just so many, and I thought that when Michael Westbrook was with DeMatha, I thought when he was healthy, I thought he was the best back that I ever coached against, and there were some really good linemen. And Archbishop Carroll, always had that receiver, and his name is, I know that you guys know who I'm talking about. He went to Syracuse, I believe. But there's just some incredible athletes that have come out of the WCAC. And it's just, it's amazing when you look at some of the guys. But I thought that Westbrook was just the best running back. He got hurt his senior year and, was out for a couple of weeks, but I thought he was tremendous. St. John's always, they were just always tough. Carroll had some really good players, and I thought that Gonzaga, they was just so well coached back then when Moss was the coach. Most of their guys at that time a lot of them didn't go on to play college football, but they were just really good high school, tough kids. And I know that's the way you were coached. And it helped me out with this, the receiver from Carroll, and this would have been the early 90s.
Well, they had Lawrence Moten.
Lawrence Moten is the guy I was thinking of.
That's
Yeah, that's my number one.
We should have his picture next to the First Amendment Sports logo.
Yeah.
He's one of our favorites. My favorite of all time as a fan.
Who do you guys consider the best players in WCAC?
I've always said Lawrence Moten
Yeah.
would be a better football player, would have been a 10-year safety or receiver in the league. But when he played safety, you couldn't throw fade on either side in the late 80s. And the guy throwing the ball to him, Marvin Graves, was the all-time passer in Big East history. Those two as a tandem, I don't think it gets any better.
Asim Penny's got to be up there, though.
Asim Penny was a really good football player.
I love Asim Penny. He's my brother.
I know.
And we've talked about it recently too. If you want to go way back, Eric Metcalf can be arguably the best that's ever come out of the conference history, possibly.
You know, O'Connell did have some really good football players. Eric Metcalf and then Terrence Wilkins. When I was in the league down here in Ireton before, he had a long professional career. He was a really good player. They had O'Connell in 1993 had 3 guys that went on to play professional football off that team.
Linwood Skipwith, Terrence Wilkins, and Casey Crawford, I believe.
Casey Crawford, Delonte
Weaver.
Delonte,
Say it again. Cameron.
Yeah, Delonte Tay Cameron. He was a very good football player.
Yes,
so
he was.
They were loaded back in the day. So our rivalries, was Bishop Ireton, it's Paul VI and O'Connell, and we're just recently back in the WCAC, and people don't realize you get in the WCAC, you just don't go into the WCAC. It's a process that we're in football. We just have been in there for the last 2 years. St. Mary's Ryken's got it cranked up. Carroll's almost. I told their coaching staff after we played them this year, I said, it looks like Sam Taylor's team. He has some good athletes on that team. So top to bottom, it's I always said when you were when I was at McNamara, you play those 5 games in a row. That's tough. And even down here now, when you're in the national conference, we play those league games. They're tough, hard-fought games, and it's nice to be in the situation we're in. I felt like we were, the pandemic hurt us a little bit because we had some momentum going, and the weight room was going well. We had the transfer kids come in, and then all of a sudden, you're not doing anything for 2 or 3 months. So we'll see how it goes. But everybody's kind of in the same boat. But you were talking about the coaches. Sometimes when you coach against people, you almost hate them sometimes, and you don't want to say that. But you realize that they're really good people. So, and I think that's a really true statement with these guys in WCAC.
Well, that's what we say. T and Kevin and I talk. T and Kevin and I have been talking about for the last 3 years. Is when you spend your time in between the whistles, there's animosity and intensity, and then for the rest of your lives, the rest of our lives, we realize that we're brothers and how much we have to stick together and really how much we love each other in a way that we never could have when we were beating each other up as 18 and 19-year-olds, maybe as 21 and 22-year-olds, in certain circles.
And who has a more similar job description than a head high school football coach at a premier Catholic conference? You've been dealing with the same people with the same issues on the same fields for eternity. Eventually it becomes hard to hate each other. And, Coach, what I've noticed is the animosity kind of lessens over the years.
Yeah, it does.
Well, it's funny because I don't know how you felt at St. John's, but at McNamara, I went there, and there was my equipment manager, the first time I met him, he just says, I hate DeMatha. I can't stand DeMatha. And I was like, these guys, Morgan's such a nice guy. And, it's just, it's class act. They do a great job. I know Bill a little bit. And after the first game, I realized what he was talking about. My first game with DeMatha is I had no clue. They put 60 points on us, I think. And we were down in the fourth quarter. I subbed, tried to get some of my guys in, and he subbed and put these guys that were really good in. And so I learned so much that first year, but I was always treated really well by all the coaches in the league. And there's this respect where, but even to this day, and maybe it's because of the success they had. All the McNamara people that I know just, DeMatha may not have thought of us as their biggest rival, but there was competition that is really the reason you play is to learn how to compete.
Yep. Well,
Coach, that's one last thing. That's one last thing I did want to touch on. What I love about you and appreciate, I think I speak for Ken and Kevin here, is that you've already mentioned John Ricca, Sam Taylor, Moss Collins,
Bill
and
McGregor,
Tom Clark,
and so many, and so many other guys. And you talked about how in all you were of these guys when you were coaching in the WCAC before. Now you're back. Now you are the Moss Collins. Now you are the guy that other coaches are going to remember. And I know you passed it down, but it's just so great to hear you talk about that. And I know you had a gap in the WCAC, but it's like you've never left.
Yeah, it's like Moss Collins was my favorite because, and when I went to St. Joe, I put on a purple windbreaker one day and looked in the mirror and I said, well, at least I look like him. Maybe I'm starting to look like him a little bit. But that guy could coach. That guy would. He had his team prepared, and I think when you coach against people like Moss and Bob Malloy and those kind of guys, it makes you a better coach. And those guys were just incredible. But I think like people forget in the 1990s, the WCAC was awesome. It was the old Metro Conference, football, basketball. When I was the AD at McNamara, we would go into the gym and every game was a war. It was just fun. And I know it's still like that. And here at Ironton, we're kind of, we were in the WCAC in the 90s when they had the two leagues and just recently getting back. And our administration's really committed for us to take the next step in athletics. It's an exciting time to be here. Our headmaster, Mrs. McNutt, has just been awesome. This is her second year on the job, and just the job that she's done navigating all this COVID stuff is amazing. So I'm glad it all starts at the top. The leadership does, and I'm just really glad to have the administration that I have here.
Well, Coach, on behalf of Tim and Kevin and all these fine young men in these pictures that you've coached over the years, I just want to thank you for your years of service to the greatest high school conference in the land. Not just my school, but a lot of people's schools. A lot of young men, young women coming out of these schools who if they didn't play for you, they studied for you, and I know that they did. We will hope to see you on the trail when we get back to business here in 2021, and we will be checking in with you. And you talk about your administration. Ironton does have a first-class front office. And you're 100% right about that. Ms. McNutt is doing an amazing job. We look forward to working with them. We have some awesome announcements coming up in the next couple weeks with regard to a WCAC-wide digital platform. And we are committed here at First Amendment Sports to making sure every member school has a fair shake and a fair spot to put out what's going on in their shop. And that's what tonight really is all about because, on the other side of the river, as we like to say here in Kensington, there's some awesome things going on in the greatest high school sports conference in the land.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'm still waiting to hear from Kevin, and I couldn't get out of Bernard what stayed at the Alamo, because I thought that was one of the greatest lines I've ever heard. So I'll have to get offline sometime and ask you about that one. But it's awesome to be on here. I really appreciate you guys having me, and it's the greatest high school conference in the nation.
Well, Coach, to that, I would like to say around here, we just call it the league.
The league.
And listening to you say Moss Collins was your favorite, also my dad's favorite, a mentor and a great guy. Other coaches that you gave such respect to, and you said they were great people. Well, there's no doubt we got one of our own great people right here on the show tonight. We appreciate your time, your patience from coming on 2 weeks ago, and you're one of the great ones. Thanks for being around, Coach.
Well, thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. That's nice to hear, and hope to see you guys again soon.
Until next Tuesday night, this is the WCAC Spectacular. I want to say a special thank you to Luke David and Victor Maddox for making us look good more than anything else. I mean, I don't know what else I can say. Come back in about 5 or 10 minutes on this very same channel. We are going to talk Washington football team. We're going to talk NFL. We're going to talk all the things that are going on in the sports world. There are actually some things going on in the sports world. Things are about to change. Our guest, Chip Armstrong. Our co-hosts, From right down the street, Tim Strachan. Thank you, sir. And my main man here, Kevin Ricco. Say no more, Tim. Say no more. Back again next Tuesday night. Thank you so much. I'm Ken Marangolo. Thank you.